Every live show, we start by pouring the tea. Very important part of this live show. I'm Adam Quiney, your host, of course. And today you can see up here, where are we? Over here, right there, as I pour this tea. Get it in camera. There we go. That's the tea being poured. You can see a little watermark there that says Restream. So this is the first time I've tried to use Restream. I don't know that it's working or not. Let's just check. Let's see if this is showing up on Facebook. What Restream should allow me to do, and I don't know that it's actually doing this, but it should allow me to broadcast out to Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn all at once. Now, the problem is that I click this and I don't see anything showing up here. Let's refresh that page. Show me, oh, there I am. Yeah, I'm live there. Looks like it's working. Okay, that's pretty cool. So this sends the stream out to a whole bunch of different services, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, et cetera, which is pretty cool. So anyhow, here we are for the live show. This is the show I do every Friday where we're going to talk about leadership topics, coaching topics. Remember, coaching and leadership are intertwined. You can't separate those two, really. They are distinct from one another, and yet they are wrapped up with each other. It's kind of like a form of duality, I guess, if you like. I'm just going to make sure we're working over here still. Okay, great. Yeah, still showing up live. And now I should be able to see all viewers here. We're currently 0, so that's as it is. That's how we're going to leave that. We're not going to worry too much about that for now. So what we're going to talk about today are a few things. I'm going to cover some questions we've had written in. One of them is, how do you sort of sit or work within the tension between being hungry for something and then being content? Hunger would be like, oh my God, I don't have everything I need, or like, I want this promotion, or even I need this promotion. So there can be some neediness, but there can also just be like a genuine desire. And on the other end of the spectrum, we can have, I feel really content with what I have and I don't need anything else, which is awesome. Good morning, Andrew. Awesome to have that, but at the same time can also be, we can feel a little lackluster, a little like, oh, well, what do we do from here? You know, if I've got that, I'm content. So what do I do now? Do I just wake up every day and sit around in my underwear? How do I work with that? So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about coaching yourself and some of the pitfalls there. We're going to talk about this notion of your bandwidth for intimacy and how that works in relationships. Talk about right action versus right being, and some really convenient, easy ways to sabotage your leadership. Yo, Mia. I'm going to give people shout outs as we do this. Shout outs to whoever's watching. If you are watching, put your name in the comments. Let me know. It's fun to be shouted at. You can tell I don't actually shout either, so it's not that bad. I'm fresh back from a trip to Whistler, British Columbia. So those of you that don't know Whistler, it was, I guess you could say it was featured in the Vancouver 2010 Winter Olympics. And so Whistler is a ski resort, world-class skiing. It's got year-round skiing, which is really cool. Probably not as time goes on, because the climate just seems to be heating up more and more, and we are all baking. We're in the middle of another heat dome, which is a new climate change phenomenon, apparently. So we're in the middle of another one of those, and I imagine that makes it harder and harder to ski during the summer months. Hey, Lydia. Anyhow, Bay and I went up there. I surprised her for her birthday, and Whistler's a little bit like Aspen in Colorado. So it's a ski resort town, not really a city, more of a village than anything, but like super cool, really fun, very distorting. Everyone seems to be beautiful. And it's like their job professionally is just to sit on patios and drink beer. So that's kind of weird. But what we noticed was how much we missed just being in the energy of people around each other. With the climate, we've gone downtown sometimes and we'll sit on a patio and stuff, but it's not quite the same. It's actually a little bit different. And so going away on a road trip and then hanging out in the city and being with each other, drinking beers on the patio was so much fun. Really, really healing, I think. Really important for us. Andrew, Andrew says, I did a sales for Whistler Blackcomb back in 2013. Got a season's pass for skiing and stayed at a bunch of the hotels. Wow, that sounds awesome, Andrew. Was it distorting for you? I imagine like we'd go there And if you spend any amount of time in there, you'd be like, yeah, it's totally reasonable to pay $15 for a hot dog. And why is everyone, when I leave this place, why is everyone so ugly? And stuff like that. That's how I imagine that would affect you. Squamish is also a very cool part of British Columbia. Really good rock climbing and beautiful coastal views and stuff like that. I'm going to turn my fan a little more directed to me here. If you can tell, it's a little oranger right now because we have just so many forest fires here on the island and in British Columbia, and all the smoke gets blown across. Most of the forest fires are on the mainland. What happens is the smoke gets blown over here, and then it just gets stuck over top of us, and it gets very hot and muggy, and everything smells kind of like a barbecue. And so right now our air quality is sufficient that we don't have to leave. We don't have to get out of town or hold all of our windows closed or anything along those lines. But it makes for this weird ghostly pallor, this orangey pallor that shows up, and it's hot and muggy and all of that sort of stuff. So that's kind of an update on what's going on here. I'd love to hear from any of you guys. What's going on in your world? What's new? What are you excited to about the weekend? Share that stuff with me. That'd be cool too. Andrew, you asked about Restream. I'll share one more time. Restream is a service that allows you to stream to multiple different places. So this stream is going out to Facebook, to LinkedIn, to YouTube. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if the picture's as clear as it usually is. It seems pretty good, but we'll see. Hey, good morning, Tommy. Yeah, it is hot. It is hot. Okay, well, let's dive in. So I've got my notes down here. What do I want to talk about first? The first thing I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about this notion of a bandwidth for intimacy and how this works in relationship. Anytime I'm talking about intimacy, I'm also talking about leadership, because while traditionally we don't hold it this way, the depth to which you can be in an intimate space with someone is the depth to which your leadership can be transmitted and you can receive leadership. So if we're trying to be very professional and keep all of our feelings at bay, that's going to mean that you can lead someone up to the point where they have feelings in a space. And then what a lot of people from trying to lead from that context, that story about leadership, will be like, well, there's no place for feelings in the business. That's great, but what that means is you're going to be able to draw out of your people precisely that which they can create or bring into the space without letting their emotions have any kind of impact, and no further. They'll just sort of, it's almost like a wall you and they are not aware you're bumping into and curving around. And so our capacity as a leader to actually be able to be with someone who's having some kind of emotions really opens up the door for us to go much deeper with them. And it doesn't mean we just hang out with people and have them wallow in their emotions, but wallowing in your emotions and suppressing them all together are kind of two sides of the same coin. They're like the poles that wrap around and meet each other at the bottom. And so the transcendent leader, the leader that can create transformation, is able to stay in intimacy with people and work through this stuff and support them to have an emotional experience while then not letting that stop them and continuing to move forward. And anytime we're going to take on something outside of the world we already know, anytime we're going to try to create a goal outside of what's already predictable for us, that's going to drive up some emotions, it's going to drive up some fears. We're going to have some reactions to that. Or it's going to drive up numbness, because that's how we've learned to be with our emotions. So Lydia, that's awesome. Lydia just sharing, I'm doing deep work in intimacy right now. That's beautiful. Me too, Lydia. Seems to be how it's going. And hi, Dave. Dave, I talked to one of your cohort I can't remember when it was, earlier this week, Lynn Denise. And we were both talking about how awesome you are. And Dave raises a really good point, which is if we cycle back and forth between wallowing in our emotions and repressing our emotions, it can feel like moving forward. And that's true as well. It's true for any of these things. Prior to a breakthrough, it's like we're stuck in a wagon rut, and there's two directions we can go. We can go forward or backwards. Forward is not progress, backwards is not regress. They're just two directions that you have available. Maybe a better way to think of it is I can go left or I can go right. And so what happens is wallowing is one of those directions, like, oh, I'm sad and I'm stuck in my sadness and I don't want to pretend I'm not sad. But in the wallowing end of that spectrum, what happens is we fan the flames of our sadness. We create castles for our emotions. We are like, oh my God, like if it's our fear, well, I'm going to switch that to sadness. If it's our fear I'm talking about, we're like, I'm afraid of this. And then, but what about this? And oh my God, if that happened, then this. And then, And so we're just building this huge fantasy about our fear. We're wallowing in it. We're wrapping ourselves up in it. We're drowning ourselves in our fear. And at the other end of the spectrum, we just try to not allow our fear to be there at all. We just suppress it completely. And you could look at any number of places where people get stuck, and there's a tension between two sides of two different ways of showing up. And transcendence is often sort of rising up above and out of that stuff. So in the context of fear, it would be no longer trying to stuff your fear and hold it below the water like a beach ball, but also not wallowing in your fear. And part of the path to really being responsible as a leader with your fear is kind of, how would I describe this? It's about allowing your fear to be in the space, and then that's it. You don't try to push your fear down. You don't let it dictate the actions you take from here, and you don't build it castles and a home and a fireplace to cozy up beside of it. Instead, we just allow ourselves to be afraid without doing any of that other stuff. And so the starting point when people want to do that kind of work is to discern between what's the difference, what is distinct between me wallowing and building my fear castles and stuff like that versus just allowing my fear to be. As you start to create that distinction, then you can start to be like, oh, I'm doing this thing, or oh, I'm going over here. The way it is for most people is they don't have that distinction. And so they're like, my choices are either pretend I don't have any fear and just be numb and cut off below the neck. Those people are successful, but they don't seem to be having much fun in life. Or I have all the fear, it sweeps me away, and then I guess I manage my life to try to best be with that. Neither of those are particularly empowering choices. They'll get you here, but then no further. Okay, so check out, I can do this too. Boom, I can feature comments. There's a comment from Dave McDonald from Facebook, and then I can hide that one. Boom, gone. Some cool stuff we can do with this Restream platform. So the bandwidth of intimacy in any intimate relationship, and the best way we can describe that is by saying in any relationship whatsoever, any relationship, there is, you could think of it like a pipe that is our intimate bandwidth. And what I mean when I say intimacy is intimacy. It's the extent to which I am open and can share and allow you to see all of what's over here. And correspondingly, it's the extent to which I can feel the same from you. So if I'm widely open and you've had an experience of this, the easiest place to see it is early on in romantic relationships, where you've got all that chemical infatuation, your body's doing a whole bunch of work to help you out. We can really receive a lot, like, oh wow, I can feel a lot, and I'm really open to this person. And when they do something, I don't close to them. I kind of like see the better side, and I'm excited about it. And I find it cute and adorable, and all of that sort of stuff. And then what happens is we grow, time goes on, the chemical infatuation starts to fall away, and then we start to put our armor back up. So you could think of it like a pipe, like this pen as a pipe. And there's, it has a particular width at any moment in time. Your bandwidth is constantly widening and narrowing. And so when you feel open to your partner, you've got a lot of bandwidth. And then anytime your partner does something that you perceive as nasty or hurtful, hey, Jess, nasty, hurtful, mean, some kind of transgression, you naturally close some of your pipeline. You close to them. You're like, I'm not willing to show you as much, because staying open in the face of someone being mean to you is it's a vulnerable thing. You're going to get hurt. And anytime our partner, and by partner, I mean like the person on the other side. So it doesn't have to be a romantic partner, but anytime your partner in any relationship perceives you to do something hurtful or fearful or unloving, there's a natural closure that happens for them. So what tends to happen in a lot of relationships is we're not aware of this dynamic at all. We don't We don't have any consciousness of the degree to which we can be open energetically with one another. Even those words sound just kind of metaphysical and woo-woo and like, what the heck is this person talking about? And consequently, what we do is we layer our attempts to resolve a relationship on top of this bandwidth that exists. So you can think of, like, sometimes I'll have couples come to me in the very last throes of their relationship. They're both like, mostly fuck you, I'm out, but let's go talk to someone just in case. And counselors get this too all the time, I'm sure. And what those people are looking for is like, give us the strategies to effect so that we can communicate better or something along those lines. But we could give you 50 million different strategies to connect and communicate better with someone. But if it's all atop this really tiny pipe between you and your partner, meaning there's just a tiny trickle of your intimate connection coming across that pipe and coming back, it's all going to have a diminished capacity to make a difference. And so what really starts to set people free in relationships is when they become more conscious to this thing we're calling the bandwidth of intimacy, and they start to do work there to expand it, to allow it to be a little more open. I'll talk a little bit more about the consequences of doing so and what that looks like. But first, I want to honor in this moment that is not easy work. It's really challenging to open yourself in the face of your partner's closure. Because just like if you have a pet who has stepped on a thorn, they've got a thorn in their paw, and you want to pull that thorn out, the pet doesn't know that you're bringing them kindness. And so anytime you try to come close to them, they swipe at you. That's what it's like being open in the face of someone else's closure. If I try to stay open, they're going to swipe at me, not because they're a jerk, just because they're hurt. And they may be hurt because of something I've said in the moment, or they may be hurt because of something I said 7 weeks ago that they still haven't let go of. And the look on my face reminded them of that thing, and it rewounded them. And so here we are. And so consequently, it's human for us to close our bandwidth, to narrow our pipeline with the other person in the face of their closure. Whenever someone over there closes, we also want to close. The second thing that I want to say is that the extent to which hold on, let me get the right words for this, and this will require some tea. The partner willing to hold a particular amount of closure or openness, the longest, is the one that determines the amount of bandwidth that becomes available. What that means is if you are really committed to growing the pipeline, the bandwidth between you and your partner you notice is closed, and they're being kind of mean, and you are willing to stay open, the extent to which you are willing to stay open will naturally call your partner out into opening themselves. That doesn't mean that it's like, great, I'm going to sit here open for 10 minutes and then things are going to move on. It's not at all how it works. In fact, it's often the reason we get messed up by this is because we have an expectation along those lines. What it means, though, is that if I'm willing to stay open in the face of my partner's closure and receive them with love, slowly but surely that invites them to open. And consequently, my partner can be like, fuck you. I'm not going to give you the satisfaction, Adam. I'm going to stay with this every step of the way. I'm going to punish you. That's how this is going to go. They have that option too. And the extent to which they can kind of defeat me, the extent to which they are able to dig their heels in and stay closed longer than I'm willing to stay open will dictate the bandwidth that's available between us. So what we're doing when we're doing really deep work in intimacy, often part of it is learning how to stay open in the face of the closure of others. And for anyone that's taken any coach training, that's a lot of the, like, once you get past the surfacey stuff, the leadership and coach techniques and tricks, like here's a life wheel, where do you want your life to go? That's fine and good. But underneath that, the work that we're really doing is broadening our capacity to stay open in the face of more and more different flavors of closure. So that's the heart of all of this work. Some of the things that happen in relationship is that you end up with partners who, one, they're not aware of this. And then so there's like a couple dynamics that can kind of happen. One is where one partner really needs there's a neediness from them. Maybe they haven't fully learned to provide themselves something that they require, like there's an internal need for love or to be proved that I'm worthy or something like that. And so they come to their partner for that. Because they're not able to self-soothe or to give themselves this gift, what ends up happening is they come to their partner and they're like, give me all of it. I need it, I need it, I need it. And the partner is exhausted by this. So the pipe's open, the partner tries to fill this void for the other person. It only works so far. And eventually the partner's like, fuck it, I can't do this anymore. And they close. They naturally close. And then when they close, they're like, I'm drained. I got nothing left for you. Fuck off. Then the partner that's needy feels like almost rebuked, and they close correspondingly as well. So at this point, the bandwidth has clenched right shut, and there's not much that can come back and forth between our partners. And at this stage in the game, the partner who has that internal need decides, fuck it, I'm just going to go over here. Like they can, on some level, feel that there's nothing more they can get from their partner, so they go over here. So now you've got this tight, like squeezed tight bandwidth of intimacy. Not a lot going on, not a lot available. And both partners are over there and stuff builds up and festers. The reason it builds up and festers is that there's no longer any bandwidth open. Partner A can't really feel what's going on with partner B because they're both closed. So there's not a lot that's coming across the channel between the two of them. And partner A feels the same way too. They feel exhausted, that there's blah, 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 they're resentful, but partner B can't receive any of that. And so what tends to happen is they hang out in this, vibrating, building up, festering. They have this energy that can't move anywhere. It's energy about their partner that kind of needs to be seen, but it can't get released. It can't get resolved because the loop that would allow them to move this energy through them is now cut off because that bandwidth has been squeezed shut. So it just sort of festers here, unable to move. And what happens then is eventually it builds up to the point where they're like, can't hold on to it anymore. And then they blast open this pipeline. It's sort of like a volcano exploding out the top. And consequently, what happens is then all of this raw stuff gets transmitted back and forth, big explosive fights. Maybe they kind of move through some stuff. They get to get it resolved, but it's pretty explosive. It's not very pleasant. And then on the backside of that, maybe things are all right for a while, or more often than not, it squeezes back shut. And so the way that stuff tends to happen in relationships like this, where they haven't built up much of a capacity to stay open with one another, is it's like peaks and troughs. Relationships tend to be like high drama, and then like sort of a period of things being kind of okay, and then like things squeeze shut, and then back up to drama, and then back down. Hey, Adam, nice to see you. I'm just going to read what you wrote here, Andrew. Well, maybe I'll just put it right here. Look at that. I can feature that. Dealing with this in an aspect of my marriage right now. When it's coming to a decision, it's been really challenging because my wife is 100% wanting this thing and I'm 0%. It's been challenging to stand for what I want. Oh, I can't show all of it. Stand for what I want while supporting her and not getting what she wants. Yes, that's very tough stuff. The heart of what you're describing, Andrew, I would say, like underneath whether we get what we want or we don't get what we want or any of that stuff is the feeling of being intimately connected with one another. If I'm a no to something and my wife really wants it and that's where we're at, can I stand firm in my no, but then intimately feel everything going on for her? Can I be as open as possible to her sharing and me feeling all of what shows up? Maybe anger, maybe rage, maybe resentment at me. And can I allow her to feel everything that shows up with me around this? As we do that, that allows stuff to get transmitted and we start to create this loop energetically between ourselves and the person that we're in partnership with in any given moment. So what happens is you do what we would call like two-body practice to develop the capacity to keep your bandwidth open and to sort of notice this opening and closing with your partner is you become more and more sensitive to the energy that exists between you and your partner. The more you can hold your bandwidth open, the more signal there is for you to do this work with. You can start to be like, oh yeah, I can feel something's off over there. In most relationships, because our pipeline is so it's so narrow, it takes quite a lot of buildup before we can feel what's going on over there. What that means is it's like we're asking our partner, hey, is something wrong, after they're slamming doors and shouting at us? We're like, okay, something's obviously fucking wrong. What's wrong? the more you are able to develop the capacity to hold your bandwidth open with your partner, and this is two body practice. You can do your work over here, but it's best done in partnership with the partner in the moment. The more you can hold that bandwidth open, the sooner you start to pick up on this stuff. You become like a sommelier, but for your partner and your energy, the energy that exists between the two of you. And you can start to feel very early on, oh, there's something slightly off in my partner's energy. What's going on? And what's really profound and beautiful about this is that you can start to feel something over there with your partner before they can. You and your partner start to become, as my teachers put it, like oracles for one another. We can feel more deeply into them. Now we have to also let go of the idea that we are right and they don't understand. That's the dangerous. The empaths often fall down this thing. Well, I'm feeling your feelings for you, and you just don't know you have them. Sometimes you are, and sometimes you're getting false positives and you're just insisting you're right. So we have to be in a dance about this. But what starts happening is that we're able to really like pick up on these subtleties in our partner's energy. And when we can do that, when we can stay open, build our capacity, and feel these subtleties sooner, what starts to create is a much more artful dance with our partner. You can think of it kind of like the best ballroom dancers, they have the technique down, but what creates such gorgeous art is that they're feeling so deeply into one another. The man or the person leading feels into the person being led and can feel their desire to turn, and almost like imperceptibly picks up on that energy, and they move as one. That's the kind of art that's available when we work to expand the bandwidth of intimacy between ourselves. And this applies not just in romantic relationship. That's where I am present for me to like the most possibility in this, and where it's making the biggest difference in my life. But I notice this everywhere. The more I practice this kind of art of opening my bandwidth and really tuning into the signal over there, which requires a willingness to feel whatever they're feeling, even when it's resentment towards you. What most of us do is we feel our partner's resentment. Fuck it. I'm going to shut the band. I'm going to close myself. Why should I have to feel that? Well, and then now I can't feel anything going on over there. I'm blind. So I can know like, and at that point, once I'm blind, my partner has to shout really loudly in my face to get my attention. And that's why relationships tend to have these blow up arguments. That's why Bay and I used to have these blow up arguments, because this was the dynamic that we were in. We've been noticing, we've been in this kind of work for probably maybe a couple of years now. And what we notice is that it's not that we don't have conflict in our relationship. We have plenty of it. We're both really powerful, strong-minded people. But our conflict, if there's a graph for like our energy together, and you know, this would be the point where it's like, whoa, stuff's getting really rough. We pick up on it right here. The inflection point where the energy starts to shift, we catch it much sooner. You're like, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? And we might snap at each other, and one of us practices staying open in the face of our partner's closure. And that allows the other partner to come back and start to like, hey, you know, I'm sorry I snapped at you. I'm mad about this at work, or I'm feeling this sexually, or I'm feeling this in my fear, or whatever. And it allows us to be in that dance and stay closer together much, much, much more deeply. So what I would suggest doing if you want to practice this is, as a starting point, noticing just your own bandwidth for intimacy. How open or closed am I in this moment? It's often a lot better to look on your side than it is on your partner's. It can be helpful to notice like, oh, is my partner open or closed in this moment? The danger, though, is then that we start to diagnose the other person, and then we want to point the finger over there. I want intimacy with you, but you're closing, so it's impossible. Well, yes, kind of, except you always get to be at cause for what you're creating. So if you are insisting your partner is closed, then your job as partner becomes, how can I stay open in the face of my partner's closure? Not from making them wrong, not how can I stay open so that they then open, because that then is subtly making them wrong. There's something wrong about them being closed. Instead, the higher level of game to play is, how can I be open exactly the way things are? How can I expand my capacity to be with all of what's showing up in the moment? That's where the art shows up. Let's see what you wrote here, Jess. I've been rehearing a lot lately the idea of us versus the problem as opposed to you versus me in a problem. Us versus the problem as opposed to you versus me in a problem. So I'm guessing from there, us versus the problem would be That's what people would aim for, as opposed to you versus me inside of a problem, creating partnership around something, as opposed to like being against each other and there happens to be a problem at the same time. I think that's awesome. I like that a lot. And Andrew, what do you say? Great thoughts on being able to feel the other side. I can definitely step into that more. I'll often just repeat my no, or that I won't be doing a thing rather than stating it once and then just being with my wife's energy and response. You've also mentioned the two-body practice before. I'll have to bring this into our marriage. Yeah, one of the hardest parts about really, like one of the barriers to intimacy is the fear that if I drop my position, I'm going to be swept away. But I kind of have to be willing, like I have to put that at risk to really get over there with you. If I'm holding on to sort of like, I'm not going to let go of this because I don't want to give up my position of power and this is so important to me and blah, blah, blah. That's why leadership fails. That's why relationships fail, is because I talk about being open to you. I talk about hearing what you have to say. I talk about wanting to listen, but I'm doing all of that while being still attached to my own position. And there's a limit to how much we can really truly get someone when we're still attached to our own position. It just doesn't allow for that much. And Adam's saying also, it's for me, how to stay open in the face of my own desire to close. Yes, as the shame judgment clouds my ability to stay present for her. Yeah. One of the starting points there is loving ourselves as our judgment, loving ourselves in and as our judgment shows up and our shame shows up. That's the beginning of the opening, is that often what we do with judgment is we stack more judgment on it. Fuck, I'm being judgmental. It's wrong that I'm judgmental. I shouldn't be judgmental. I should be open. So now you've got a double whammy. You've got this layer of judgment, and then you've judged that judgment, and you can't open this fist up as long as you're holding it shut with this other fist. And so the combo breaker to that is for us to bring love to our judgment. One of the ways Kyle Cease, for those of you that know Kyle Cease, he's a former, well, I guess he's still a comedian, but now he's a transformational speaker, is how he builds himself. My friend Nathan Seward shared this with me. Kyle Cease suggested, like, list the stuff you hate currently about yourself. So like, I'm a judgmental motherfucker, and then just add at the end, and I love that about myself. And it's a silly little thing, but you'll notice resistance to doing that. And that resistance, anytime you're up against your resistance, that's a good thing, because it means you're practicing something new. And so that simple practice, like I'm lazy and I don't do any of this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I love that about myself. It's a very small thing. That's like a 1% gradient we're playing with, but that is an act of bringing a bit more love and a bit more playfulness to these parts of ourselves that we have a lot of judgment for. All right, so that's the intimacy bandwidth. We're not going to talk about that anymore. We're done. Let's see what questions you have. Andrew, you felt like I didn't answer your question last week, so I'm gonna make sure I hit this one this week's. So let's see what you wrote on it, Andrew. You said, what are some ways that you can be with and explore commitment? I've had it reflected back to me that my expectation of commitment may not be the same as a potential client. I've also come to the realization that at times a prospective client wasn't enrolled in their commitment, and it seems to be masked by other objections. Not worth it, not the right time. Good question. So the heart of a lot of this, I would say, starts with enrollment. Most people take on commitment from the place of something they should be or do. I should be committed to this. And then from that, they're like, okay, great. I should be committed to this. So I'm committed to this. I'm going to be committed to this. Here's the easiest place to see this is like, I should lose weight. I should be healthy. And then they try to create an empowered commitment from that. But they're not actually enrolled in anything other than like, they're not enrolled in anything other than that they should do something. And so, you know, if I tell you, you should do this, and you're like, okay, great, I should do that. Now, how do I empower that? How do I create a story? Like, it's just never going to be as powerful as you getting really clear on your what for in doing this. Andrew, I know that this is this week's question, but I really did answer your question last week, the one you brought forward. So So the first place we always want to look when people aren't taking action is, what are they actually enrolled in? What is it that they're actually committed to? What is it that they like? What did they see as possible for themselves? Are they actually enrolled in this, or are they just saying it? Are they just using the words commitment? Are they just saying that they're committed, but really where they're coming from is, yeah, it's something I should do. So that's the first place I always want to look with people. If someone comes to me and they're like, oh, I say I want to do this, but I'm not doing it or whatever, I kind of want to look at like, well, what is the actual thing you're enrolled in? And if we stuck with that weight loss, workout, fitness kind of thing, often what they're enrolled in is not being shitty. It's more nuanced than that usually, but that's like the heart of it. They're like, I suck because I'm not doing these things. I know I should be doing these things. I'm not. Therefore, I'm lazy, crappy, stupid, lame. Therefore, I should work out. I'm going to be committed to working out. And the best experience / result you kind of get from that is white knuckling through to create results. So you can force yourself to do something for quite a long period of time, but always what's left in your life is that the way you're fueling yourself is by, it's like you're creating your life out of a fear of becoming shitty. And a life created from that place, it's never going to be that empowered, because it's sort of like, imagine if we had someone who from the moment they were born, we were like, hey, there's a shark running after you and it's going to devour you. And that was our motivation for that person in everything they did. Eat your vegetables, that shark, it's right there. We dressed up in a shark suit. I mean, this is horrible. I'm not suggesting you do this with your children, people. I want to be clear about that. But imagine we raise someone that way. What's going to happen is that child is going to learn to like do a bunch of stuff. Maybe they become like a really good sprinter. Maybe they become really reliable to generate money because they're terrified of this shark devouring them. But their whole life becomes an expression of trying to make sure they're not devoured by a shark. So their life ultimately is really one dictated by fear. There's not going to be much rest. There's not going to be much ability to like enjoy their money. It's all a function of, I sure as fuck hope I don't get devoured by that shark following me. That's the game. That's what they're up to. And so that's a bit of a ridiculous metaphor, but it's not that different from what we're describing. When people are really ultimately what they're enrolled in is like, I need to do this, I should do this, otherwise I suck. They can create results from that, but those results are a function of trying to outrun sucking. Jess with the shark emoji, thank you for that. You're very on point. Is that a shark? Yeah, that's a shark. Looks like we've got a great white up in here. So anytime people aren't taking action they say they're committed to, that's where I want to look first. What actually are you enrolled in? Like, and really what we're kind of looking at is, does the action itself occur to you as rewarding? Would you enjoy taking this action? If this wasn't going to generate a result, would you still do it? Or is this entirely a means to a particular end? And that's usually where enrollment, that's where the dividing line is between like someone being really enrolled in something and someone being enrolled in like the thing that they think they need. Anytime we try to take action as a means to a particular end, that has a short half-life, and it's very challenging to actually like create something magnificent and beyond our comfort zone from that place, anything transformational. This is why when you have employees, when you have leaders who kind of hold it like, why should I have to enroll people in this? They should just fucking do it. I'm paying them money. I'm paying them. Like they should just do what I'm paying them to do. You can make that insistence. You can hold that stance, but then people are purely doing they're not enrolled in anything other than continuing to get paid. So you've created their whole raison d'etre. What they're doing is purely a means to an end, a means to continue getting paid. And that creates people that are willing to do precisely enough to keep getting paid and no further. Likewise, if you have someone who is trying to lose weight in order to not feel shitty, they will do precisely enough work to not have to feel shitty. And involved in that calculus is like, how much am I willing to feel shitty? Because all of us have like a capacity, and many of us a great capacity, to like heap shit on ourselves. and to have shit heaped on ourselves. So it's not just like, great, I don't want to do this because I'll feel shitty. And the moment I feel a little bit shitty, I'm going to run into action. No, no, no. You have like a shit meter that you can, this is getting very scatological, but you can be with X amount of poo heaped on top of you. So that's also going to be a function of your calculus. As opposed to like, if you really got enrolled in like, hey, I want to lose weight, but really what I want to do is live an active lifestyle. And we started to look at that and like, okay, great. Well, how do you enjoy being active? Well, I haven't found anything yet. Okay, great. That's your first job. Find some kind of active lifestyle that you actually enjoy for the sake of itself. I never played squash to get fit. I played squash. It was the most fun thing in the entire world. And then a happy byproduct of that was that it very fitness inducing sport, but a very beer drinking inducing sport too. This is like one of the highest caloric burns of any sport and probably one of the highest levels of drinking of any sport. Anyhow, so if we can find like an activity that you just enjoy for the sake of the activity, that's going to start to create a far more impactful result because you're going to enjoy what you're doing for the sake of doing it. This doesn't mean that everything in your life has to be perfect, that there's never a moment where you do something that you don't particularly enjoy. So the danger here is, as I draw out like kind of this gross distinction, which is like people enrolled in doing something to overcome their fear or to not suck versus people doing something because they are excited to do the thing. It doesn't mean that we couldn't zero into a certain point and be like, yeah, but Adam, clipping my nails doesn't have anything. So, you know, like you can defeat all of this with enough nuance and getting very fiddly about it. What I want to invite you to do is zoom out with a bit of altitude and just notice, hey, where am I looking at this stuff that I say I want to do? Am I actually enrolled in something? You're always enrolled in something, I should say. What am I actually enrolled in? Am I actually enrolled in doing this thing? Am I enrolled in some kind of possibility from doing this thing? Or am I enrolled in just like, I got to do this, I'm checking off the box, the end. That's what I want to do. Jess, thanks for just highlighting. If you knew this wasn't going to generate a result, would you still do it? All right, just coming in hot with the mind blowing this morning. When I remember a moment when I was coaching. These moments happen a lot less these days, but in the early days, I guess I had a lot of work in front of me, and so coaching often felt like I was doing a lot of work to generate business, and like, fuck, I'm supporting and serving so many people. That's how I felt, and it's not coming back to me. So much was coming back to me, but a lot of it I couldn't see. And I remember kind of feeling like, geez, is this going to work? Are we going to make it happen? And one thing that I would often go back to was that thought, which was, well, what if this didn't work? Like, what if you have to go back and get a job, Adam? What would you do? And the answer was, I would keep fucking coaching people because this rules, and I love this work, and the opportunity to serve people in each moment is so profound and beautiful and life-changing and transformational that even if I had to go back and get a job as a lawyer or a project manager or a stock boy at a grocery store or a waiter, because there's a lot of those jobs available right now, whatever I was going to go back and do, I knew already I was still going to find time in my life to coach people. That wasn't going to go away. I wasn't going to be like, I'm done with that because it didn't work, so I'm not going to keep trying. I'm going to go over here and do it. Coaching was that was now a part of me. That was who I wanted to be in the world. And so from there, that provided me a lot of solace. That really helped me see, like, every time I got wobbly, every time I was scared or felt like there was a real scarcity in my life, I would find solace in that thought. Oh yeah, I want to do this no matter what. And if I'm willing to keep looking, there's going to be opportunities to keep doing that. What do you say, Andrew? I honestly feel like in all the work I've done as coach to this point, a topic like this before hasn't really been covered. This is fascinating. Oh, cool, Andrew. I'm stoked to hear that. You're talking about like enrollment and that sort of stuff, right? The reward connection is one that I'll often just skip over, and connecting the action step to actual fun and reward. Yeah, that's often what we miss. We miss it because we also try to, when we're looking through the lens of enrollment, people kind of sometimes look to the big, broad, like, I'm going to go for a run and I'm enrolled in this fitness thing, but that's looking at like, sorry, let me word that a bit better. I'm going to start running and I'm really enrolled in weighing 180 or whatever the number is for anyone. 180 is my number. And so I'm really enrolled in it and blah, blah, blah. And we may be enrolled in that big result, but the other place we want to look always, always is what's the experience of my life that I want to be creating? And how would this contribute to that experience of my life? So part of the experience of my life that I'm really committed to is that life is generous and abundant. And so what that means for me is that I always tip a lot. If you put a little thing that says, would you like to tip? I always put yes. Even and especially when I've gotten bad service these days, or when I feel like I always drink soda water because it's fizzy and it's therefore better. And, you know, sometimes I'll go to a restaurant and I drink soda water and I drink a lot of water. I just tend to drink a lot of liquids. It's a bit habitual for me, which is good when I'm drinking water, not so good when I'm drinking beer. I can put away a lot of beer if I'm not conscious. But anytime I go into the restaurant, and sometimes what they'll do is they'll charge me like for 3 refills on soda water. I'm like, what are you doing? You charge me $10 for soda water. Come on, man. Those times I get resentful and I want to be like, fuck you then. I'm gonna take it out of your tip. You charge me that way. Because of my commitment to live in a generous world, what I choose in those moments to do is to really relate. Like I choose a different way to relate to it, not because I have to, but because of my commitment. And the way I choose to relate to that is, hey, here's a place where there's not a lot of generosity. There's a lot of scarcity in this place that I'm currently in. There must be. Otherwise, why else are they charging me $2.50 per soda water refill? More than anywhere else, this is where my generosity can make a difference. So I'm going to choose past my human desire to close, and I'm going to give generously. That in and of itself, when I do that, gives me an experience of generosity. Maybe if I do that enough times, that restaurant will change. Probably not, but maybe. Maybe if I do this stuff, there's going to be some result in the future. But more importantly is that in the moment when I practice that way, I get a different experience of life. And that is what has me enrolled in it, is every time I say yes, tip, especially when I don't want to, I notice that it opens my experience of living in a generous world. Andrew French coming in saying it's just one mountaintop to the next with little joy, but just temporary relief. I think you're talking about when we're just sort of taking actions to achieve an end unto themselves. Where he says, operating from our essence, tying into curiosity, and doing it from joy is a whole new world. Yeah. I'm very good at, like, the first 30 years of my life were entirely lived as actions as a means to an end. And I was quite good with that. Very efficient. Most of the legal profession, most of my time spent in the legal profession working as a lawyer, some of it was enjoyable. I often, like, when I was the most enjoyable moments were when me and the partner I was working with were working through a legal argument and, like, okay, but what about that? Like, you know, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. That was really fun. But everything else was like a means leading just up to that point. And when you were in court speaking extemporaneously, meaning like in the moment, that was really fun and thrilling. The judge asked you a question, you're like, how do I answer this? What's the good answer? But like I had to do 40 hours of prep work. I'd probably get more efficient as time went on, but like a lot of prep work leading up to those moments. And none of that prep work did I enjoy. None of like scouring a document to make sure there was no commas missing or apostrophes that I'd left out or anything like that did I really enjoy. And that was a microcosm for a lot of my life. A lot of my life was like, do this, because if you do this enough, you will get to be over here, and that will be a reward. And then, of course, life lived from that place becomes like, the funny thing is you get the reward and it just skims right by, and then you're looking on to the next one. It's like a series of croquet, whatever those are called, gates. You go through, that's dead to me. Now I have to look at the next one. So our life can really transform when we start to get clear on the experience we're wanting to create moment by moment as we go forward. Adam saying that you had a coach who made you accountable not to just take tasks, but to celebrate. Oh, my connection's having connection issue on my stream. Stop that. It's because my internet's stupid. And Andrew saying it was pointed out to me that I don't really celebrate. I find it still a little weird because the progress itself feels like celebration. I'm still figuring that one out. Yeah, that's a common one for my people is we're like, well, the reward unto itself will be a celebration. Achieving the result will be celebration enough. Let me give you a funny example of that. So just this week, I received confirmation that I'd successfully passed my MCC test, my Master Certified Coach. So I'm now a Master Certified Coach. I have an MCC little badge they gave me. What that means is I've demonstrated coaching at the highest level of the core competencies for the International Coaching Federation. I've accumulated, I think it's like 3,000 hours of working with people. I've modeled coaching. I've modeled the ethics of the foundation, and I've gone through like a bunch of mentorship and training to achieve this. So thanks, Andrew. So doing that has been quite an accomplishment. It's been a real journey, and not one. It would be a lot easier for me to have not done this and just be like, I don't need that, because I don't. In no way, shape, or form do those 3 letters at the end of my signature have any impact on my ability to generate revenue, on the quality of the coaching that I'm doing, on the difference that I'm making in people's lives. Just don't. The process to get there certainly has made a difference and has had an impact, and certainly has led to like the coaching I'm doing with my clients is more subtle and nuanced and potent and profound than before. And I'm doing less work and all of this stuff. So it's not that there's no benefit that happened. It's just that if I hadn't done this, I would still be making a difference in the world. I'd still be doing amazing things. Anyhow, the reason I'm sharing this is that going through this process has been challenging at times. Getting feedback like, hey, you're doing a lot of work, you're doing guessing for, all of that stuff, which is easy to filter into like, great, I suck and I'm doing stuff wrong. And then I choose out of that and I choose a more empowering story, belief about it, et cetera, et cetera. And consequently, with all of the challenge there's been a bit of like this, I can't wait to have, like, I submitted these calls for them to evaluate and then like was just waiting. I was like, I can't wait till they say yes. I can't wait till it's there. Anyhow, I got the email in the morning and I shared with Bay and I was like, yay, that's awesome. And then immediately forgot about it. Like, it's gone, it's done. There's no like, the victory of having achieved it lasted a couple hours. And I was back to work and I was talking to clients and I was doing this work and I was doing whatever. So it was so fleeting. Now, I want to be clear, I'm very committed to celebrating it. The reason I'm sharing this story is just to model and to exemplify for people like me how easy it is to step past that onto the next thing. The next thing for those interests, I think, will likely be breathwork training. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards. Maybe some stuff related to trauma, more to make sure that I'm checking my feet as opposed to just assuming I know everything that I know. But like, just notice how like this was a 6 month to a year process, and indeed maybe even 10 years that I've been working towards this, and how quickly it goes away. I can just see like, wow, look at that. Got it, done, on to the next thing. And so when people tell me, especially people that I'm like, I can see a lot of me in you and you in me, when they're like, oh, the reward, the achieving the result will be celebration in itself. I'm like, fuck you. Fuck you, it will. Has that been the way it's been in your life typically? I don't buy it. If you tell me it has, and that's that, then great, we're going to go along with it. But rarely is that the case. Adam, yeah, did that with my first master's, was already disappointed I had not confirmed my next career steps yet. Yeah, and I imagine for Olympians, getting that gold medal is like the height, the pinnacle, but then what? We're here, we did it, but now what? What's going to happen? I don't, how do I be with this? So this speaks a little bit to, this segues a little bit into a question Corey brought, Corey Anchor, who used to train coaches with me and actually worked on some leadership. When I worked for Accomplishment Coaching, one of the projects I was taking on was developing the curriculum for their leadership track. So you can train as a coach and then you stay on to lead their work, which I did for about 5 years. And one of the projects I had was taking everything that was kind of just there, floating about, loosely known, and systematizing it and writing it all out. I don't think that stuff ever got used, but I'll revisit it sometimes. I'm like, damn, this is amazing what we ended up creating. And Corey was one of the people on my team. So Corey asked, how do you stay hungry in the face of achievement and actually accomplishing your goals, right? So like, how does that Olympian not just then wander off, lie down in a meadow and die or do whatever, just eat ice cream for the rest of their life? He said, I love the new changes in my life and things have mostly been going on my way. And on the one hand, there's a beautiful flow in that, but on the other hand, it kind of minimizes one of the sources of fuel, my discomfort. So remember we were talking earlier about the poles that we push out to, and anytime there's an opportunity for a breakthrough in your life, one of the ways you can start to discern this, kind of like a diagnostic, is when there's this tension that exists for you between one direction and the other direction. So like, if there's probably a breakthrough around anger, then you may be like, either I'm blowing up with incandescent rage at people, or I'm cutting myself off and I'm numb from the neck down. And which of those two is the right way to go? And we're trying to resolve, like, do I go this way or do I go that way? Which is the better way? Maybe I go over here. Maybe I'll spend half my time there. Anytime you're doing that, like trying to choose between one or the other, that's a good sign that there's a breakthrough available for you, because breakthroughs are rarely, do I choose this way or do I choose that way? They're often a transcendence in such a way that upon creating the breakthrough, that need to choose between those two things just falls away. It stops even being a question you're even engaged in anymore. And Jess saying, I just imagine the sassy voice in your head, Adam, going, get the fuck out of here. Yeah, totally. It's very, very New Yorky, which is not at all how I sound. Jess is definitely one of those people convincing themselves that results equal celebration, which is hilarious since I'm a very joyful, celebratory person as well. So to Corey's question, first of all, notice that tension. Either I can be needy, hungry, striving, chasing after. There's a million different ways we can label it, but like that energy of like, I need, where I am currently is not okay, and I need to be there. So that particular energy often is manifested in people that are like high-powered business people, very like people really engaged in a lot of leadership, not necessarily transformational leadership, but like leading something, causing something, making something happen. That energy drives them to create results, very driven. So A-type kind of personality, I got to get this thing, I got to get this thing, I got to get this thing. A lot of us here on this conversation today, just based on the comments and myself, we can fall into that kind of place. I got to do. The other end of the spectrum, so that's hungry, right? That's the hungry part. And then the other side is the contentment, or we might even call it complacency, or we could call it like the pop psychology version would be surrendered. And so this kind of energy manifests often in what we might call conscious communities, manifests a lot in yogic communities, manifests a lot in free love kind of style communities. I want to be clear right at the outset that neither of these two sides is better or worse or wrong or good or anything like that. So we're not laying this out like business over here, yoga stuff over there, ergo good, bad. That's not the intention here. It's more to notice these two fundamental tensions, or this fundamental tension, and that when you embody one of them, you will tend to find yourself showing up in certain ways that are rewarded in certain places in the world. And those places in the world also reinforce those ways of showing up. So like on the contentment side, you will often hear this, you'll see this where people, like a lot of yoga teachers are like, well, people won't pay a lot of money for what I do. So I just have to learn to be okay with not needing a lot of money. And that might not be consciously how it gets created, but like you can hear that in their speaking. I'm not trying to pick on yoga people. We could choose Burning Man or, whatever. So what's happening here is that people have, if on the one side, the businessy side, people are run by their desire. Their desire has them by the nostrils and leads them forward. On the other side, people have, they've gelded their desire. They've clipped their desire. So they can be totally at peace with life exactly as it is in front of them right here, right now, and they don't need or want for anything. But in doing so, they've kind of eliminated their need or their want. They've taken away their desire altogether. And so we get the one side or the other side. And typically people swing that pendulum back and forward. So like that Olympian might be like, wow, I got that gold medal, but what a cost. I was so hungry and striving and everything in my life that was important fell away. That person typically will, one of the things they'll do is they'll find a new thing to chase after to just reiterate this, or they'll swing out to the other side. I'm just going to be okay with whatever. I'm not going to set any goals for myself. I'm not going to set any measures. I'm never again going to do that. I had a former Olympic finalist in my practice who this was what he'd done. So he'd gone from the intensity that brought him to that place, setting goals for himself and just killing himself, chasing after them, to once we started working together, he would never make any declarations. He had an allergic reaction to the act of making any kind of commitment or declaration. And consequently, the results he created were mostly kind of like, the only metric we had was how he felt about them. Now that's fine. It's not our job to tell him what he should or shouldn't do, but like there's a half-life to that. And he'd swung himself out to that other side. So the transcendence for this, often the breakthrough that's available is shifting up into an empowered relationship to commitment and declarations, as opposed to attachment on one side or resignation on the other side. So the attachment is where people are like, I'm going to do a thing. And then they get so attached to it. They're like, fuck. Like they can't just be anymore. Whether or not they get that goal, whether or not they achieve that result becomes life and death. And all that they can really sort of allow, all that they can do is just to force that result, which becomes very unpleasant. But they get the result. So it's kind of like, okay, on this side, my experience of life moment by moment is pretty unpleasant, but at least I'm creating results. That part I kind of like. That's kind of good. The other side of this swing is to the resignation, which is like, I'm okay if things never ever change, and I'm not going to have that much desire. And so they're almost like resigned to things being the way they are. They're not willing to make any declarations. They've given up. They've resigned even their desire for things to be any different. What that transcendent breakthrough up into commitment is about is like giving ourselves permission, first of all, to desire for stuff, to want something beyond what we already have. If you already have it, I would assert your desire is a bit tamped down, because it's human nature, like there's a reason that we are watching each other virtually, and it's not because we accidentally created all of this infrastructure to support it. It's the magnificence of our desire, the magnificence to strive further and to create more than we currently have. If all we wanted to do was secure, like to push our genes down the line, we all would have probably stayed as hunter-gatherers. Now, I'm not in celebrating this tendency of us, we also have to recognize there's negatives to it. Colonialism, imperialism, all of the horrible things happening. Climate change is also a function of our desire. So you can see what tends to happen is that people either, again, they swing out entirely to just celebrating desire and fuck the consequences, or demonizing desire and fuck ever allowing that. And if we could just do that, then we could all be hunter-gatherers, live on the land, and life would be perfect. Yeah, but we would give away something in doing so. So as we create that transcendent breakthrough, as we step more into our commitment, the way it works is that first we have to start hearing the voice of our desire that we've probably quelled. If life is perfect and content and you never ever wanted it to be any different, the place I would invite you to look is to start listening a little more deeply to your desire. What do you want beyond this current moment? And there's always something. That's human nature. There's always something more. The grass is always going to be greener. The only way to ensure that's not the case is for us to quell that voice. And so our work becomes, can I allow myself to hear the voice of my desire without being made heartbroken by the gap between what I desire and what's currently here, without being devastated by that, and without letting it sweep me away into just chasing after it and losing sight of everything around me. Put differently, the game becomes, can I simply be with my desire? This shows up a lot in intimate work too, like sexual intimate work, where for a lot of men, what gets created is we have very little capacity to be with our own desire. And so what happens is we get horny, we have the desire for sex, and then we just jerk off, we come. We have sex with our partner and then come straight away and it's done. It's very quick. We don't have much of a capacity to actually allow fire to be within us. The alternative is we just decide, fuck it. I'm just going to be okay with not fucking. Therefore, I can be around women, I can be around people without being threatening or any of that. But then what happens is we become gelded. We don't have any desire brewing. We can't hold fire. Instead, we just shut it down. Now, typically, societally, what's happened is that men are more on the side of like, I must actuate my desire, hence rape, stuff like that. And women have been societally more towards the direction of, I must tamp down my desire. And we've created that societally, right? Like, you can even look at the ways, like when a man sleeps around, he's a player. When a woman sleeps around, she's a slut. And so from those two things, you can really see like, oh, well, of course, then men are going to be trained into, just to be clear, neither of those are good things. Both of those people are suffering in different ways. And men are going to be trained into throwing off their desire with very little capacity to hold it and to be someone like that's able to build desire within themselves and use that energy for something positive. And women are going to be trained out of holding any desire, out of having any of that, are going to tamp it down. So in all of these cases, it's like, where can I hold desire? Can I be with my desire? Can I allow it to sit here? And can I use that energy in a way that lets it sort of become transmuted through my body? Can I circulate it as opposed to firing it off, getting it off my shoulders, out of my loins, whatever you want to call it, or pretending I don't have any of it, tamping it down? And that's where conversations in the realm of sex start to bleed into conversations in the realm of life. This is why when people are like, people create all of these fancy descriptors for what they do as a coach. I'm a laser business super ninja coach. It's all life coaching at the heart of it. There's no separation really between your fuck and your commitment to your business. How you are in your business is how you are in your fuck. Now, conventional leadership wisdom would have those two things as separate as you could imagine, and that it's completely inappropriate to bring those two things together. And I wouldn't necessarily stroll into a bunch of executives that I'm coaching and developing their leadership and be like, let's talk about your fuck. But that remains the case. It's going to be there. We can't separate those two parts of ourselves. I'd love to hear anything. The comments have been quiet for a while, so I'd love to hear anything any of you guys are hearing from this particular piece of conversation that we're talking about. I'm going to start to move on to our last question for today, our last topic. Maybe I'll hit a couple of these actually. Pour that last bit of tea. Right action, right being, collusion in leadership. I want to talk about collusion in leadership. I just want to figure out why I wrote that and what that actually means. I don't know what that means in this moment. So you're totally all right, Adam. You don't need to apologize at all. Let's talk about rushing leadership as a starting point, and that might lead into colluding. So One of the things that often happens, I guess I should set up some context for this. Bay and I run a couple of different things. We run a group called The Forge, which is a 9-month program. And we run an event called the Intensive, which has not happened for a while because of COVID. Intensive is a public intensive. Anyone can come and do that work with us. It's a low barrier to entry. It's about $2,000. You do have to come to Victoria, but I would assert that's a reward in and of itself. And for both of those things, we have leadership opportunities. So for the Forge, once people have graduated, if they are really vibing on the work we're doing, if they're like, hey, I want to go deeper into this, I want to develop my leadership as opposed to just my capacity to coach people and to really do something profound with people, there's an option to do that in the Forge. And in the Intensive, we have all of the participants, and then we have a leadership team. And so what tends to happen is that in both of those instances, people want to lead yesterday. They're like, if it's the Intensive, they're like, hey, I love the work you're doing. I want to be a part of it, but only if I can be on the leadership team. And with the Forge, people will show up and be like, hey, I want you to relate to me as though I'm already on the leadership team. I'm going to do this work, but I don't want you to give them the good stuff because I want to make sure I get the stuff I need. So can you bring me that stuff too? I so get this, first of all. Very much my own game of like, I need to be there yesterday. Another place that I often see this is where people have basically what's happening, you could call it as like a sense of entitlement. I have a history of 10 years of leading in corporate executive leadership. I don't want to do leadership 101 because I already know this. So all of that makes total sense in an informational capacity. If what we're up to is teaching you stuff about leadership, then all of that's probably going to be like, who cares? You've probably learned or picked this up along the way a whole bunch. When we're talking about transformationally, though, and ontologically, as opposed to epistemologically is like what you know. Ontologically is who you be, how you be. In that regard, all of your training, in our experience, as corporate executive leadership, is likely in the way of you developing the breakthroughs. They're going to have you be a greater leader than the one you currently are, because they serve as a reason for you not to have to listen to us. They serve as a reason for you to be like, I already know this, and to tune out. They serve as a reason for you to say, I hear the feedback Adam's giving me, but I'm actually pretty sure blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to keep doing that thing. And what that does is it allows you to stay exactly where you are, safe, secure, comfortable, rather than letting us make a difference for you so you can show up as a leader. So all of these are forms of rushing our leadership, right? Like, hey, I want to be a leader yesterday. Start to relate to me as though I'm already on the leader team. And this is what's often in the way of people's leadership, is really slowing down and being exactly where they are and trusting the person that they're working with. Another way that I'll see this is where people are like, I see your, Jess, Lydia, thanks for sharing what you share. I'm going to come back to that in just a sec, speaking to what we just finished talking about. Another way this will show up is people wanting to hire a coach. They're like, but it has to be you, Adam, because I don't like other coaches and I don't want to work with a lower or a less experienced or whatever coach. And that's not just me, other people. But then they're like, they're not ready to make the commitment financially. And so then what they do is they just put more and more and more time between where they are and starting their work today. Oh, I have to have the best coach, or at least this particular coach, rather than starting my work right here today. And so there was someone I can think of who had reached back out to me after like a year of not talking to me and said, hey, I'm ready to start. I want to do this work. And then it was kind of ironic because we got back to the exact same place that they were stuck the first time we talked. Of course, because they hadn't taken on their work in the meantime. So why would things be any different? And what happened was they got to the exact same place they got last time and then pulled out again of the conversation, disappeared. And really where I'm standing for them was like, hey, if it's not me, let's find you the person that you will empower so that you can begin your work today. And that's the thing that really starts to advance our leadership. When we really start to grow is when we stop kind of holding out like, I need to be over there. And we start to really trust like, hey, here's where I am right now. I'm going to stop rushing my leadership. I'm going to start empowering exactly where I am. And what if I made this moment the most I could make of this moment before moving on? Now, it's important that we acknowledge that lots of coaches and people pertaining to transmit leadership are not really doing that. And so there is always a bit of a dance between how can I look over here and make sure that I'm where I need to be? And at the same time, how can I trust the person that I've empowered at this point? The easiest way to practice this is if you're in a coaching relationship or you're working with a leader that you don't find the conversations particularly empowering, what you can do is bring that conversation to them. Well, I don't want to do that. That would hurt their feelings. That would be really awkward. That's where your leadership stopped. The only way leadership can happen is through your intimacy. If you aren't sharing your intimate truth with the person responsible for developing your leadership, how is anything going to grow? Well, they should just know. They can't. That is your leadership moment. Okay, let's see. Jess, you said we're talking sort of about the topic we just finished: intimacy, leadership, desire, being with our desire. Jess says, I've typically been very siloed in my life. Everything has its own lane. A lot of the growth for myself lately has been in the realm of what you said about everything being related and part of life and intertwined. Yeah. When we stop siloing life, when we start to integrate all of us everywhere, meaning there's not a different version of Adam that people get on a live than that they get when I'm hanging out with you in person. There's not a different version of me showing up at an interview than there is hanging out with my friends. It's all there. Now I'm responsible for its impact, but I'm not putting on a facade over here and I'm not putting on a facade over there. I'm not being one way at work and one way at friends. When you start to practice that, what you find is that work-life balance as a conversation falls away. There's not a lot of that left because it stops being like, there isn't a balancing to do. It's just life. You're just showing up as you in your life. And that's miraculous. Time stops being stressful. Things stop feeling so heavy, not because you've sorted some magic thing out, more because you've stopped resisting parts of who you are over here and stopped resisting parts of who you are over there that are different. That used to be very challenging for me. I remember a moment where this was when I was in software. So when I was in software, long ago, work and life were very different. Work was like show up, be mostly professional, maybe get drunk now and then with coworkers. And then life was like get wicked stoned, go out dancing. I was a good dancer, go out to the clubs dancing. And I remember a moment when I was out and I was baked, waiting in line to go into a club with one of my friends, and like our two of the owners of the company I worked at, I'd gone out getting drunk with them in the past, but like they showed up online. We're like, oh, hey, how's it going? And I was like, fuck, they're here. I'm baked. How's it going to be? I couldn't allow the part of me that got stoned to be expressed like I am now, right? In this moment, I can own that happened, that showed up. And so that created a lot of tension and stress. When those two people showed up around me in that situation, I had to hold parts of myself in check. Is it okay for me to make that joke? Oh, whatever. It was very anxiety provoking because I was now fixated on who I needed to be in the moment rather than just like, well, just now this is how I am. So let's express that and allow that to be in the space. And when you start to take that on, your life becomes much less effortful. It's a lot less efforting. Lydia says, it seems and feels edgy to allow myself to have the fuck censored in my business. I can see where this brings me to my edge with my coaching. Yeah. The teachers that Bay and I have teachers in the intimacy of yoga, which is yoga we practice. And one of them was sharing how there was this part where he made a decision with his partner to like allow a part of his own sexuality to be expressed. And he didn't speak to this directly, but I know the same one, which is like for the longest time, part of my own sexuality was sort of like, I will never find another woman attractive. Only you, Bae. And so that's not realistic. And like, because there's energy everywhere in the world, there's an abundance of it. And I'm gonna have desire for certain people. Now, that I have desire is not a problem. I'm committed to being responsible for that desire, meaning I'm not going to go and rub up against them or hit on them when I'm married or like even leer at them at all, but leer at them when my partner is with me or any of that sort of stuff. But what I had done was I had learned to kill that part of my desire. So I was just a walking head as opposed to allow that to exist and to let my woman share in part of that. And that's what our partner was sharing with us too. He was sharing like not to be disgusting or gross about it, but to like bring that to my partner, knowing that it's not always going to feel that good for her to know that like there's turn on that exists here that's not necessarily just being generated by her. But as long as we're shutting that part of ourselves off, there's a part that becomes private and that cannot be shared with our partner. And as soon as we do that, we start to wall parts of ourselves up in our intimate relationship. And then it becomes harder. That's why you end up with people cheating on their partners. It's why you end up with people like kinks that get sort of like expressed in sometimes just kind of hurtful ways, sometimes in harmful ways, is because there's these walls they've set up where a part of themselves can't be expressed with their partner, and then that breaks down the free flow of energy. I want to be really clear that none of this is easy. This isn't just like, so therefore go and do it. This requires practice, artful practice with our partners, but this is kind of like the opportunity that's there for all of us. Adam, from a logical perspective, I get this so much, but that thought process clouds our ability to discover layers, like the monk who walks the same trail every day, yet still takes the time to discover something new or unseen in the familiar trail. Can you elaborate a bit on that, Adam? Like, it sounds like from a logical perspective, you get this, but then there's another part, like a caveat to that. So I get this intellectually, but can you tell me, fill in what that but means? And hey, Jess, nice to see you. Jess says, I love this and practice this. If everyone is trying to get to the beach, we all start where we are currently. If you are in the mountains, we start there. If we're at the beach parking lot, we start there. I used to think I would start the work when I was closer to the beach. We start now wherever we are. Otherwise, I never start and I just use every excuse. Yeah. So what Jess is speaking to is like this idea like, once I'm there, once I'm at the beach, then my life will start. And that's an acceptable way to live your life. A lot of people do. Once I'm on vacation, then I will feel free. Then I can breathe. Once I'm on vacation. I have a client working through this right now. They were distinguishing that they were living for vacation. I'm basically just putting in these 2 weeks for my vacation. Now you can do that. A lot of people that end up in this is a common theme of people in government jobs is they don't enjoy their job and they're just hanging. It's called the golden handcuffs here, and probably a lot of places. They're just putting in time to get their pension. That's a miserable way to live your life. Another version of that is people that like work themselves to death so they can retire at 55. Then they can live their life. These are not particularly empowering ways to go about our life. They're totally acceptable choices, but to kind of sacrifice X amount of years or weeks or even minutes of your life in this moment so that you can then have the right experience, the experience of being at the beach, as Jess puts it, we're giving away a lot of opportunity. Hey, Raf, nice to see you. Andrew says, I've liked the philosophy that you can have attraction to the other sex, but your sexual desire and focus should solely be directed at your intimate partner. Not always easy to be fully aligned with, but I've noticed a lot of shifts in that. Seeing the beauty and feminine in my wife and embracing it. Yes, indeed. And Jess, you say, I remember we talked about this in the Creating Clients course about the energy, that when we cut off the energy that we're afraid of, usually mid-realization, we generally end up with weirdness anyhow. Yes. Better to own and be responsible for what's showing up, similar to focusing on what you don't want and manifesting it. I remember when I was leading work with accomplishment coaching, there's one rule. We're very clear about this one rule, almost a little draconian. The one rule was don't get into relationship romantically with the people you are here with. And the reason that rule is there is because in transformational work, you're going to get really intimate with each other. really, really intimate. You're going to see each other on a level that is not common in the world, not natural. I mean, it's natural, it's not free, it's not the default. And you're going to be seen by people, and that's going to just create stuff. It's going to drive stuff up, it's going to create feelings. Once you get into romantic relationship, you can no longer stand for each other. I can't coach my wife. I've tried, it doesn't work. Because anything I point to over there, she can point to back over here, and blah, 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 and it all falls apart. And once people get into relationship, they start holding secrets, they start colluding with everything falls to pieces. So one rule. This rule was really easy for me to follow at that time because my own ability to be with my desire and my sexuality was killed. It was dead on arrival. And so no problem. I just operated from the head up. I never even would allow the thought into my mind that someone might be attractive to me. I would just kill that straight away. So we can do this, but there's a more artful place to come from, which is to like feel the attraction, to feel our desire, and then to be responsible for it. Oh, wow, this person's beautiful and I'm attracted to them. And then what that allows for in leadership and coaching, if we can be responsible for it, if we can not, being responsible means like, this person I find attractive and is beautiful, and I'm going to acknowledge that fact. I'm not going to pretend it's not there. And now I'm going to be very careful to make sure that that doesn't cloud any of what's going on. What that then starts to open up is that we can do things like, I'm just going to grab a book to read while I'm talking to you. We can do things like start to notice how their sexual energy, how they are about their own sexual energy. So some people are very loose with their sexual energy. More often, I notice this with women, though I've seen it with men too. And what that looks like is like, you've probably had this experience where you're around women who there's a lot of like their sexuality just sort of comes across at you. And when you're around people like this, you're like, ooh, is this person into me? And it's alluring, it draws us in. Sexual energy is very powerful. What that does is, one, it will allow them to, I want to be clear, this occurs with men too, but I'm going to use women in the example because it's people that identify as women tend to have more access to this than men. For men, it can occur more predatory. That dynamic allows them to draw people in, kind of get people in their orbit. But it also does things like have them wonder, like, why don't people take me seriously? Why do people are always talking about my breasts or whatever? Now, there's something for those people to be responsible for, but there's also something for that woman to be responsible for. Like, how are you being about your sexual energy that is creating this? As long as I'm cut off from the neck down, all of this, it bypasses me. I don't get drawn into it, but I also can't really distinguish it. And so as I've learned to be more responsible for my own sexuality, to allow it to exist and be present while still being responsible for it, I have a much greater capacity to start to reflect this to people. Be like, hey, I noticed there's like a looseness to your energy. Are you present to that? Now that's a sensitive, tender conversation, so we have to navigate it with a lot of art. Likewise with men, but that's what becomes possible as we deepen our own exploration, is that we can start to feel this stuff more often and then reflect it, not get drawn into it, but notice that it's there. Be like, I noticed the impact over here is this. Is that what you're intending to create? Blah, 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 blah. I want to read you, let me know if anything showed up for you as I was sharing that, because I know that's a tender place. It can be quite a touchy thing. So I don't want to step over it and just be like, great, I'm done. I'm just going to find, I'm looking through, there's a brilliant part in this book, Radical Honesty, that I want to read specifically about this, which I may be able to find, or I may not be able to find. You know, you just never know. This is a really phenomenal book. I highly recommend this to you. It's one of my favorite books. Okay. Maybe I won't be able to find it because this book has a lot of paragraphs that I've outlined. And so I'm going to give it just a couple seconds. Bear with me. And if not, then I'm going to, I'll just share it with you. Okay. So I can't find it. but he's the author's Brad Blanton. Jess, Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton. This book's not what people think it is, or at least it's not what I thought it was. What I thought it was, I was like, oh, great, here's a book that's going to invite people to be fucking assholes that are irresponsible for their impact. Not at all what it does. Brad's very clear about you got to learn to be honest with yourself, and then you got to be willing to be honest with other people, and then you got to stay with them and receive their honesty back. How did what I said land with you? As opposed to doing that thing people do where it's like, well, I'm honest, I'm a truth teller, that's what I do, so I don't have to really listen to my impact with you. No, fuck you. Come back here. If you're a truth teller, you better be willing to be a truth listener as well. If you're just a one-way dynamic of truth, that sucks. Who cares about that? It's a two-way street. So go ahead and tell me everything you want to tell me, but then you got to be open and willing to receive the impact of that. Most people are not. They'll sit and listen, but they won't actually they won't actually receive it. So in this book, there's a story he tells where he had a client who really wanted to lose some weight. And what he's sharing is that he noticed she's like quite curvy, even with the weight she had on, she's quite curvy, quite attractive. And he's like, I noticed that you're pretty curvy, and like, I find you quite attractive. And I want you to know I'm safe. I'm not going to act on that. I'm happily married. I have no desire to do anything about that, but I don't want to step over it, because I imagine that if you start to lose this weight that you've had with you for all this time, more and more men are going to start to notice you. And many of them will not be responsible about the way they've learned to notice you the way I am. And so I just want to, bring that forward. And then she shared, well, that's cool. I kind of find you attractive too. And what Brad is saying is like, in acknowledging what's there, now they can be responsible for it. They can be like, acknowledge, okay, there is something, like we don't have to pretend that's not there, and we're not going to touch it. We're not going to act on it in any way, but at least now it's out in the open. It's in the light of day. What I believe leads to a lot of the problems that we see around sexual indiscretion or sexual abuse. That's a very complicated matter. So I don't want to sort of be like, this is the reason. But part of what creates the problems, I believe, is that people are like, I would never do anything like that. And we build up this whole identity about what we would never do. And then what that does is we are blind to seeing when we are actually doing that. And the longer we stay blind, the more that thing can fester. And so that's where you end up with people who, like, they end up doing things that are wretched and awful. And often I don't think that's who they wish that they were, but they pushed it back so long that it blindsides them when it happens. What did you write, Adam? In regards to leaders not desiring to start at 101 with sessions, as they're in fast forward and advanced version mode, instead of engaging with the people while engaging with you, discover more and discovering and remaining open. Yes. Here's another version of this that I've seen show up in coaching, especially people that have some coach training or some ontological training, some leadership training, some background in transformation. This is another version of like rushing our leadership. We can get into a place where we are trying to coach ourselves as we are speaking. So what that would look like is like, let's say I'm in a conversation with my coach. I might be like, okay, here's what I'm bringing today. Excuse me. I'm having a hard time reaching out to this particular person. I'm kind of nervous about it. And I know what I just need to do is like share with them this, and then like take on some kind of exercise, and then I'll be over it, and then we can move on. And so I don't really know why I'm bringing this, and there's probably nothing I actually need because I'm pretty sure I've already got it figured out. So that's the dynamic that we're talking about, is we're trying to be so responsible that it actually creates a place where we can't, that's what gets in our own way. We're like trying to coach ourselves rather than allow ourselves to have the gift of being coached. And I see this all the time in leadership conversations and coaching conversations. And what happens is it denies us the opportunity, and it also provides us the safety and security of denying this opportunity of letting someone else make a difference on us, letting someone else have an impact in our lives. As long as I'm figuring it out before you can provide me anything, then anything you provide me, I don't have to feel whatever story I've made up about you being able to see something I can't see. For a lot of us, when someone has something that we can't see, it's like, that means I'm weak or stupid or dumb, or I should have seen this already, or they're better than me. I don't want to release the safety of that. I want to be the one that has the answers. I want to keep you down below me. So often in our attempts to coach ourselves, we're actually getting in our way, because it takes away the capacity to just practice being a client, to have the gift of someone being able to see something we can't. And if the stuff you can already see is great, but the whole purpose of this work of transformational reflection and discovery and awareness is that you have blind spots and you can't see into those blind spots. So it's great that you're doing all this work to see all this stuff, and now let go of it, because that's in your way. That's just making it harder for you to be with the idea that someone else might have something that you can't yet see. Jess is saying, so good. I think that's true of so many issues. Generally unwilling to accept those parts of ourselves that are dark or bad, or unwilling to admit that they even exist at all. Yeah. To me, this is the heart of the divide in the US, politically speaking, is that both sides are so polarized and so insistent that the evil is over there, that makes them blind to the evil here. And consequently, they can't see themselves being hypocrites. And from there, well, what's the best it's going to get, right? We can't move past that. And then both sides are right, in as much as the other side is doing the very thing that they are pointing fingers at and judging, and nothing can really move on. And that replicates itself societally, replicates itself individually. And this is why often the best place, I think, like anti-bullying day is one I often see. And I really think the best place we could work with anti-bullying, this is a bit of a half-baked thought, but like I really think it would be something like compassion towards bully days, starting within. So the first place would be like, hey, where can I see I've been a bully this year, this week, this month, this day? Where can I see I've been a bully in my life? And where can I see some of myself in this person that is bullying someone I love? And how can I hold that with love and compassion while not condoning it, while not giving it a free pass or anything along those lines, but like, how can I hold compassion there? Now, having said that, that's a big step, right? Like to do that, especially when someone's bullying the love of your life, your child, that's going to be a really hard step to take. But I do think like this is more of a metaphor for all of these places where this would really make the biggest difference, is for us to bring compassion and start to be willing to take a look on our side rather than over there. Now, having been bullied as a kid, I would say it's really fucking hard, because as a kid, it was terrifying. And all I wanted to do was just hide or disappear. I remember, it's a bit of a random story. I remember I had one of the ways I kind of like created a pseudo sort of retaliation was I created a program. I was like coding, writing software at a very basic level. This is not advanced stuff, but for anyone that used to use DOS and remembers .bat files, I had a .bat file I'd sort of created that you'd run it, and if you didn't provide the password, it would delete the file that it would open otherwise. If you provided the right password when you ran it, it would open that file. And this file had like a list of all the people I was ultimately afraid of and found as bullies. And then it had like the ways that I wanted bad things to happen to them. One of them like walked off a cliff wearing his too cool for school oversized jeans and stuff like that. So it's not like I'm not sharing that because I'm necessarily proud of it, but just because well, it occurred to me in the moment. And from a place like that, it's really hard for the individual to have compassion. And that lack of compassion is the challenge. That's where the transformation happens. And it's the resistance, the struggle to open up in the face of being hurt by someone else's closure that keeps us all closed, keeps us all stuck. Okay, I'm starting to feel a little rambly. We're getting to the end of our time together today. So let's start to wind down. Let me see if there's any quickies that I want to address before we close off. David asked a question I'm going to speak to really quickly, which is, what do we do when we constantly don't fulfill on our declarations while being in committed action and even being supported? So I would say in this situation, one, well, there's a few places I would check. What kind of support does someone have? And is it the support that would serve them? Two, are they actually taking the right actions that are required, or are they taking the actions that they can currently see to take? The story, the metaphor for this is the drunk searching for his keys underneath the street lamp, even though he lost them over there because there's light here. That's often we take all these actions. We're like, I'm doing everything I need to do. And it's like, well, you're searching for your keys under the street lamp because there's light there. But actually, the thing you need to be doing is getting into that dark area over there. So are we in right action? Do we have the right kind of support? And who are we being as we take that action? You can take all the action in the world, but if who you're being as you call up people is apologetic or abrasive or whatever, it doesn't matter what actions you take, it's not going to have much of an impact. So those are the really simply the places I would look. And if someone is certain they're in right action and certain that they're being what is called for and nothing's happening, then I would take a look at like, what kind of support do you have? And is it actually revealing to you what's missing? Because if you're in right action and right being, then you should be creating right results. Results should be coming. Not necessarily instantaneously, but if we're talking like, a year or something like that and there's no results, then there's something missing. That's where I would have you look, David. Okay. Let's show Brad Blanton's book one more time. Today's book is Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton, PhD. Look at this handsome guy on the back. That's some good hair. Boom. This is such a cool book. And here's the spine test, just so you can see. That's quite a good book. Lots of stuff highlighted in the spine there. I really loved that piece about, is this the part? He's talking about taboos about excitement. The problem with denying sexual energy is that sooner or later, somehow or other, it has to be dealt with. Repression doesn't really make things go away. The feelings and excitement that are so bothersome to us resurface in other areas of our lives. For instance, a person who has put a lot of energy into denying his own sexuality and making sexual behavior an evil thing may become a self-appointed defender of the public morals and will make it his civic duty to screen pornographic movies and books in a tireless effort to protect the young people of this country from filth. This may be the only way he can deal with his own sexual feelings without violating what his mind believes is acceptable behavior. Most of us, however, don't go to this extreme. We suppress our sexuality with guilt, moralism, compensating forms of excitement like overeating, overworking, smoking cigarettes, taking drugs, drinking, and so on. We keep ourselves busy thinking, eating, working hard, and alternately using tranquilizers and stimulants rather than staying in touch with the sensations in our bodies. And then he goes on to say a bunch of other awesome stuff, all of which I recommend. So, great book. Was this... Oh, yeah, this is... Here, I'm going to read the last section because I just found it. I didn't have it hit with a thing. So, Stephanie started therapy because she wanted to lose weight. She was 23, had a receptionist job she disliked, and wanted to lose 30 pounds. She was shy and mildly depressed and particularly unhappy about being fat. She was also very pretty and also very pretty and overweight or not had a voluptuous figure. In fact, I imagined her being overweight had a lot to do with her attractiveness. During our first conversation, I said, I think you're pretty, and overweight or not, your figure is still very sexy. She blushed and said, thank you. I said, I imagine that men hit on you and come on to you all the time. She nodded and smiled. Then the following dialogue ensued. Me. How do you feel? Not me, Adam Quiney. Me, Brad. Brad, how do you feel about that? Stephanie. Well, at first I'm flattered, I guess, but really I don't like it too much. When the men at the office make little wisecracks, I don't say anything, but I don't like it. There was silence for a while. Brad. I imagine when you start to lose weight, your figure is going to be even more noticeable than it is now. You're going to have more of that to deal with. You'll have to create some other way of handling men hitting on you besides getting fat again. Stephanie. Yes, I know what you're talking about. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I've quit diets before for that very reason. Brad. Well, what about right now? I'm attracted to you, and I'm telling you. Are you embarrassed? Stephanie. Yes, a little, although it isn't as bad as at work. Brad. Are you attracted to me? A little bit, she said, and looked down and blushed. I notice that you're looking down and turning red, Brad said. We both laughed. Sure is a shame we're attracted to each other, isn't it? We laughed again. She said, I don't really think it's shameful, but I do feel embarrassed. I talk to my girlfriend, Shelley, about this all the time. I think it's funny, and I also kind of feel sad in a way. I don't know why this. Brad, I appreciate you for being willing to talk to me about this. I want to talk to you about attraction and embarrassment and sadness. I also want you to know that we can talk about these things without having to make a pass at each other. I'm married. I won't come on to you, and you don't have to worry about that with me. But I like your smile, and I like your willingness to talk with me about this. I'm happy when you say you're attracted to me. We both laughed again. Final little bit I'll read. Stephanie, I like this too. I never would have brought this up with anyone else, but I'm glad that we're talking about it. Usually I would wait and tell Shelley later that I thought you were cute and liked me. Actually, I'm kind of relieved that you're married. We laughed again. Laughter is the sound of freedom. We liked each other. I noticed something else about you. Go ahead. This is interesting, Stephanie prompted me. I noticed that you are very quick to smile, even when you talk about being angry or you're embarrassed. I imagine everyone thinks of you as a nice girl, and so on. So that's an edgy conversation, right? Like bold, potent, and you can imagine like if Brad is going to speak that way to Stephanie, he's going to have to be willing to hold the space for however she has a reaction, whatever comes up from that. Andrew asks, his language is quite bold. Is Brad a coach? No, he's well, there is a point where this stuff starts to become blurred. So he's a PhD. He's a psychotherapist in private practice in Washington for over 30 years. My experience of Brad and his writings, I've read about 3 of his books. This is by far my favorite. My experience is that he embodies a lot of the coaching embodiment, and really he's relating to his people as whole and complete, and therefore bringing a powerful conversation to them and being open to them bringing that same conversation back to him. So really, really awesome book. And he shares a lot of case stories and stuff like that. All right, we are done. We are at the end of this live. So we have successfully put a little restream screen mark there. I don't know. I haven't checked. I've been checking Facebook, but I haven't checked. Here's the title of the book for you, Tommy. Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton. I'll put it in the comments here as well. I've not checked Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton. I don't know if this posts back out. Looks like that went to YouTube, but not here. I'm not sure if this went actually to LinkedIn or YouTube. We'll find out. And I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. Really great to hang out today. And we'll see you next week. I think next week, I'm pretty certain we've got a special celebrity guest. And I believe that'll be Sarah, who has done the Forge with us, has done our leadership track, and is now stepping into the 3rd rung of our leadership track. So we'll have lots of cool stuff to talk about. It'll be a really interesting conversation. Have yourselves a fantastic weekend. Love you guys. Bye for now.